Welcome to Emotions Unfolded. If you love emotional, dramatic, and real-life inspired stories, don't forget to subscribe and stay connected for more powerful stories like this. I still remember the night my life ended and the one where it secretly began. I was 18, standing in the middle of the living room I had grown up in, but somehow it had never really felt like mine. "Pack your things," my mother said, her voice cold and sharp like glass. No hesitation. No emotion. Just final. I laughed at first. Not because it was funny, but because it didn't feel real. "Wait, what?" I asked, looking between her and my father, hoping one of them would break character and tell me this was some kind of twisted joke. But no one did. My father didn't even look at me. He just kept scrolling on his phone like I was background noise. And my younger brother? He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching me like I was some kind of failure finally getting what he deserved. "You heard your mother," my father muttered. "You're 18 now. Time to figure life out. Figure life out." I swallowed hard. I just graduated. I don't even have a job yet. "That's not our problem," my mother snapped. "We've done enough for you. Enough." That word hit harder than anything else. Because the truth was, they hadn't. Not really. I had spent my entire life trying to be enough for them. Good grades. No trouble. No demands. I stayed quiet when they forgot my birthdays. I smiled when they compared me to my brother, who could do no wrong. And still, somehow, I was the disappointment. "Please," I said softly, hating the way my voice shook. "Just give me a little time. A few weeks. I'll find something, I promise." For a second, just one, I thought I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes. But it disappeared just as quickly. "No," she said. "You've been dead weight long enough." Dead weight. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like a door closing for the last time. I nodded slowly, even though my chest felt like it was collapsing. "Okay," I whispered. And that was it. No hugs. No, "Are you going to be okay?" No looking back. I packed my life into 2 worn-out suitcases that night. Clothes. A few books. Some old photos I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. And at exactly 11:47 p.m., I walked out of that house. Not one person stopped me. Not one. The night air hit me the moment I stepped outside, and for the first time I realized I had nowhere to go. No home waiting for me. No safety net. No come back if things get hard. Just 2 suitcases and silence. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, staring at the house I had just been thrown out of. Curtains were still open in the living room. I could see the faint glow of the TV inside. They were already moving on. That hurt more than anything they had said. I expected anger. Maybe regret. Maybe even guilt. But what I saw was worse. Indifference. Like I had already been erased. I walked for hours that night. Not because I knew where I was going, but because stopping felt worse. Every step felt heavier than the last. My feet hurt. My arms ached from carrying everything I owned. And my mind? It wouldn't stop replaying their voices. Dead weight. "You've been enough trouble. We've done enough for you. Enough." I kept whispering that word under my breath until it stopped sounding like English. Around 3 a.m., I found a bus station that was still open. It wasn't safe. I knew that. But at that point, I didn't have the luxury of safety. I sat down on a cold metal bench, pulling my jacket tighter around me. People came and went. Luggage rolling. Conversations fading. And I just existed there. Invisible. That was the word that kept coming back to me. Invisible in my own family. Invisible in my own home. Now invisible in the world. At some point, exhaustion won. I must have fallen asleep sitting up, because the next thing I remember is a security guard gently shaking my shoulder. "Hey," he said softly. "You can't stay here." I nodded quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I'll leave." He studied me for a moment. Not judgmental. Just observant. "You okay?" he asked. That question almost broke me, 'cause no one had asked me that in a very long time. I forced a small nod. "Yeah, just figuring things out." He didn't push. Just sighed and handed me a small paper cup of coffee from a vending machine. "Then figure them out somewhere warm," he said. It wasn't much, but I still remember that cup of coffee like it was gold. The next morning I found a cheap shared room in a rundown building. Smelled like old carpet and cleaning chemicals. The walls were thin enough that I could hear every argument in the next room. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had something that was mine. I got a job 2 days later. A small diner on the edge of town. Long hours. Low pay. Constant exhaustion. But I didn't complain. Because complaining meant I still believed I had options. And I didn't. Not anymore. Life became a cycle. Work. Sleep. Work again. My hands got rough from washing dishes. My feet swelled from standing too long. My body ached in ways I didn't know were possible. But slowly, something changed. I stopped crying every night. Then I stopped crying at all. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because surviving left no room for it. One night, a coworker asked me why I never took days off. "You're gonna burn out," she warned. I remember smiling faintly. "I don't really have anything to go back to," I said. She didn't know what to say after that. Neither did I. Months turned into a year. Then another. I switched jobs. Learned new skills. Took night classes whenever I could afford them. Every step forward was small, but it was still forward. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being the girl who got kicked out. I started becoming someone else. Someone quieter. Stronger. More focused. Someone they wouldn't recognize anymore. And then came the moment everything shifted. A job offer. Not just any job, but one that would change the direction of my entire life. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to enter a world that my family couldn't even imagine I belonged in. A world that would eventually bring me face to face with them again. But this time, I wouldn't be the one asking for a place to stay. I didn't plan to change my life that day. I was just trying to survive it. Started with a simple opportunity, something I almost ignored. A small notice pinned outside a community center. Entry-level administrative assistant training provided. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't impressive. But it was a step up from washing dishes for 12 hours a day. So I applied. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to hope. The interview was held in a cramped office with flickering lights and mismatched chairs. There were 5 other applicants, all more polished than me, better dressed, more confident. I remember looking at them and thinking, I don't belong here either. That old feeling came back, familiar and heavy. But I didn't leave. I stayed. 'Cause leaving had become too easy in my past life. And I was done being that person. When my name was called, I walked in slowly. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. The interviewer was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a tired expression. She glanced at my form, then at me. "You don't have much experience," she said. Not unkindly. Just direct. I nodded. "No, but I learn fast. And I don't quit." She studied me for a moment longer than necessary. Then she asked something unexpected. "Why do you want this job?" I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I didn't know how honest I was allowed to be. Finally, I said, Because I've already had everything taken from me once. I just want a chance to build something that stays. Silence filled the room. She didn't smile. She didn't react. But she wrote something on my paper. And that was enough. I got the job. It wasn't high-paying. It wasn't prestigious. But it was stability. And stability was something I had never truly known. The first few months were hard. I made mistakes. Small ones, but enough to make me question myself. I worked longer hours than anyone else. Stayed late without being asked. Learned everything I could from anyone willing to teach me. Some coworkers ignored me. Some underestimated me. But I didn't care anymore. Because I wasn't trying to be liked. I was trying to become unbreakable. Then came my first breakthrough. A system error at work that no one could figure out. People were frustrated. Management was ready to outsource it. But I stayed after hours, studying it. Not because I was asked to, but because I couldn't sleep thinking about it. And I fixed it. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But enough to stop the system from collapsing. The next morning, my name was mentioned in a meeting. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. Things started to change after that. Slowly. Quietly. More responsibility. More trust. More recognition. I didn't celebrate. I didn't relax. 'Cause I was afraid of losing it. Everything I'd ever loved had been taken away before. So I worked harder. Years passed like that. Work became growth. Growth became promotion. Promotion became leadership. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being just an employee. I became part of decisions, strategy, direction. People started asking for my opinion instead of giving me instructions. And every time that happened, I remembered the night I was thrown out. And not with sadness anymore, but with fuel. By the time I was 28, I was no longer surviving. I was building. I had moved into a small apartment of my own. Nothing fancy, but it was quiet. Safe. Mine. I wore clothes I chose. Ate food I liked. Lived on my own terms. And for the first time, I felt something I never had before. Peace. Then came the offer. A position at a much larger company. One I had only dreamed about before. Better salary. Bigger responsibility. Real influence. Felt surreal. I remember sitting alone in my apartment, staring at the offer letter for a long time. Not because I was unsure, but because I was realizing something important. My life had completely changed. And I hadn't even realized when it happened. I accepted the offer. And that decision was the one that led me back to them. The new office didn't feel like a workplace at first. It felt like another world. Glass walls, bright lighting, people moving with confidence I used to think was something you were born with. I wasn't intimidated anymore, but I was aware. Aware that I had walked a long way to stand here. And no one in this building knew that version of me. My first week passed in meetings, introductions, and quiet observation. People spoke differently here. Not louder, but sharper. Every conversation had weight. Every decision had consequences. And I liked it. It made me focus even more. On the third week, I was officially assigned to review incoming applications for a new department expansion. HR handed me a stack of files. "Just screening," she said casually. "Flag anyone with potential." I nodded and took them to my desk. Nothing special. Just routine work. At least that's what I thought. Hours passed. One file after another. Names, qualifications, experience, until I saw one application that made me pause. Not because of the qualifications, but because of the name. My fingers stopped moving. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I blinked. Read it again. Same name. Same surname. The surname I hadn't seen in years but could never forget. My chest tightened. And suddenly, I wasn't sitting in a modern office anymore. I was 18 again, standing in a living room, holding 2 suitcases. I closed the file slowly. My breathing stayed even, but my mind didn't. I told myself it could be a coincidence. Common name, common situation, but nothing more. But deep down, I already knew. Some names don't feel like coincidence. They feel like history knocking. I didn't say anything that day. I placed the file back in the stack and continued working. But I couldn't focus anymore. Every line I read felt heavier than the last. 'Cause something I had buried years ago had just walked back into my present. That night, I stayed late in the office. Not because I had to, but because I needed time to think. The building was quiet, almost empty. Just me and the city lights outside the glass. I sat there, staring at the file again. And for the first time in years, I felt something I thought I had outgrown. Anger. Not loud. Not explosive. Controlled. Sharp. Deep. Because I wasn't the same girl anymore. And neither were they. The next morning, HR called a meeting. "We've shortlisted candidates for interviews," she said. "You'll sit in for final selection." I nodded calmly. "Sure." My voice didn't change, but something inside me did. The day of the interviews arrived faster than I expected. Candidates came and went. Names I didn't care about. Faces I barely registered. Until the last slot of the day. "Send in the final candidate," HR said. The door opened, and time stopped. He walked in first. My younger brother. Same face. Same posture. But older. Heavier. Like life had finally started pressing back. He didn't notice me at first. He was too focused on the room. Too nervous to look around. "Please take a seat," HR said. He nodded and sat down. And then, the second person walked in. My mother. For a moment, I thought I might actually laugh. Not because it was funny. 'Cause it was unbelievable. They didn't see me yet. They were just applicants. Nervous. Polite. Careful. Nothing like the people who once called me dead weight. HR started the formal process. "Let's begin the interview." And then she turned to me. "This is one of our senior managers overseeing this position." My mother finally looked in my direction. Our eyes met, and everything changed. Recognition didn't come immediately. Came slowly, like reality refusing to be accepted. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something much more dangerous. Shock. Her lips parted slightly. My brother shifted uncomfortably. And I just sat there. Calm. Controlled. Silent. 'Cause for the first time in my life, I didn't need to explain who I was. They already knew. Or they were about to. The room didn't feel real anymore. Felt like time had slowed down just to watch what would happen next. My mother was still standing near the doorway, frozen. My brother had already taken his seat, but his posture had changed, stiff, unsure, like the ground under him wasn't stable anymore. And me? I stayed calm. Too calm. Char broke the silence first. "Let's begin the interview," she said, looking at my brother's file. He cleared his throat, trying to regain confidence. But I could see it. Confidence wasn't real. It was borrowed. Fragile. The same way it always had been back home. "Tell us about yourself," HR asked. My brother started speaking. He talked about ambition, responsibility, growth. Big words. Safe words. Words that sounded good on paper but meant nothing without action. I listened quietly. Not judging. Not reacting. Just remembering. 'Cause I remembered a different version of him. The one who used to laugh when I was punished for things he did. The one who never once stood up for me. And yet here he was, trying to sound like someone worthy of opportunity. Funny how life works. When he finished, HR nodded politely. Thank you. We'll review your profile. Then her eyes moved to my mother. Next candidate. My mother straightened her posture. She adjusted her clothes. Smoothed her hair. Till performing. Till controlled. Even here. Even now. She began speaking. And I listened. And not to her words but to the tone. The same tone she used when correcting me. The same tone that made me feel small in my own home. She spoke about experience. Leadership. Management skills. Ironically, she spoke like someone trying to sound important, not someone who actually was. I noticed something then. She avoided looking at me directly. Not completely. Just enough. Like if she didn't acknowledge it fully, it wouldn't be real. But it was real. I was sitting right there. When she finished, silence filled the room again. Tar glanced at me. Your turn to provide evaluation, she said. Slowly. I leaned forward. For the first time since they walked in, I spoke. Not as their daughter. Not as the girl they once controlled. But as the person holding the decision. I've reviewed both candidates' profiles, I said evenly. My voice didn't shake. Not even a little. And I have some concerns. My brother shifted in his seat. My mother finally looked directly at me. This time fully. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Recognition wasn't just happening anymore. It was sinking in. I continued. The experience listed is inconsistent with previous roles. I paused. And leadership claims are not supported by measurable outcomes. The room went quiet again. Shar looked between us, sensing tension but not understanding its depth. My brother tried to respond. I can explain. But I raised my hand slightly. Not aggressively. Not loudly. Just enough to stop him. And he did. Immediately. That small reaction told me everything I needed to know. He still responded to authority. Still reacted the way he always had. Nothing had changed. Then I turned my gaze to my mother. And this time, I didn't look away. Neither did she. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The air felt heavy. Not because of tension, but because of history. Finally, HR asked carefully, "Is everything all right?" That question almost made me smile. 'Cause everything was far from all right. But not in the way she thought. I leaned back slightly. Calm. Composed. Controlled. And then I said the words I had never imagined saying to them like this. I believe we should take a closer look at their employment history before moving forward. My mother's expression changed instantly. Not anger. Not confusion. Realization. Slow. Heavy. Unavoidable. 'Cause she understood something in that moment. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a reversal. A shift. A reckoning she didn't see coming. My brother looked at her, confused. "What's going on?" he whispered. But she didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes stayed on me. And for the first time, I saw something I had never seen before. Not control. Not authority. But uncertainty. And I knew then, the truth was no longer waiting in the past. It was about to come out in the present. The room felt like it was holding its breath. No one moved. No one spoke. Even HR seemed to sense that something far bigger than an interview was happening in front of them. My mother was still staring at me. But now her stare wasn't confident anymore. It was searching. Like she was trying to place a memory she had spent years pretending didn't matter. My brother broke the silence first. "Look, I don't know what's going on here," he said nervously, forcing a small laugh. "But I think there's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding." I almost smiled at that, because that's exactly what they used to call my pain. I slowly closed the file in front of me. Not rushed. Not emotional. Just final. Then I looked at both of them properly. Not as a daughter. Not as someone asking for approval. But as someone who no longer needed it. "I don't think there's any misunderstanding," I said calmly. My voice didn't shake. Not even a little. "And I don't think either of you are here by accident." My mother's expression tightened slightly. She finally spoke. "You work here?" Her voice was softer now. Careful. Almost like she already knew the answer but didn't want it to be true. I nodded once. Yes. Just one word. But it changed everything. Silence again. Thicker this time. Heavier. My brother looked between us, confusion growing. "You know her?" he asked my mother. She didn't answer immediately. 'Cause answering meant admitting it. And admitting it meant accepting what she had spent years refusing to see. I stood up slowly. Walked a few steps closer. Not threatening. Not emotional. Just present. Fully present. "I applied for this position when it opened," I said. My eyes stayed on my mother. I didn't expect to see anyone I knew. A pause. But life has a strange way of circling back. My mother's hands tightened slightly at her sides. For the first time in my life, I saw her unsure of what to say. Not angry. Not controlling. Just human. My brother whispered again. "Wait, what does that mean?" I finally looked at him. Really looked at him. Not with anger. Not with resentment. But with distance. "It means," I said slowly, "that the person you used to call useless is now the one deciding whether you move forward in this company or not." The words landed heavily. Not dramatic. Not loud. But undeniable. My brother's face changed instantly. Shock first. Then disbelief. Then something quieter. Realization. My mother finally stepped forward slightly. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. Her voice cracked at the edges. For the first time, she didn't sound in control. I let that question sit in the air for a moment. Then I answered honestly. "Because when I was 18, I said softly, "I didn't get a chance to explain anything either." That line hit harder than anything else. Because it wasn't loud. It was true. My mother looked down for a moment. Not fully breaking. But shifting. Like something inside her had finally started to understand weight it had ignored for years. I continued. "You told me I was dead weight." A pause. "You told me I was nothing." Another pause. "And then you made sure I had no reason to come back." The room stayed silent. No one interrupted. No one defended. "I didn't come here for revenge," I said finally. My voice stayed steady. "I came here because this is my job." A long silence followed. And in that silence, everything settled. The past. The pain. The years. All of it. My brother lowered his gaze. He didn't have anything to say anymore. Because for the first time, he understood the gap between who we used to be and who we had become. My mother's voice came out quieter now. "We didn't know." I nodded slowly. "I know." A pause. But that was never the problem. I picked up the file again. Looked at both applications one last time. and then closed it. I'll review your applications fairly, I said. Professional, neutral, controlled, just like every other candidate. 'Cause that was the truth. Not forgiveness, not revenge, something more powerful. Fairness. I turned slightly, signaling the end of the meeting. But before they left, I added one final line. Not for them. For myself. People don't stay where they're not valued, I said quietly. And I learned that the hard way. My mother didn't respond. Neither did my brother. They simply turned and walked out. Slowly. Quietly. Different from how they once walked away from me. Because this time, they were the ones leaving. After the door closed, I stayed still for a moment. Not because I was emotional, but because I was finally at peace with what had happened. No shouting. No breakdown. No dramatic revenge. Just truth. And closure. I looked out the glass wall of my office. The city stretched endlessly ahead. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back.